ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for the invitation, for having me here at the 8th Annual Texas Symposium on Women, Peace, and Security, and it is a great honor to stand here and share my thoughts on demography as well as provisions of the Hungarian family policy. Before beginning my seminar, I would like to briefly introduce myself. I have worked as a consul and foreign trade counselor at the Vice Consulate of Hungary in Houston since August the 1st. I came to the US with my family in 2018. I spent 4 years in the San Francisco Bay Area as a science and technology counselor until the end of June. Earlier, I was cultural editor-in-chief of MTVA, an umbrella organization operating public television and radio in Hungary, and vice chairman of the National Cultural Fund, an independent state fund responsible for financing cultural life. Previous to that, I was the deputy minister at the Ministry of Human Capacities. For 12 years, I worked as a speechwriter for Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán and Speaker of the House. Before that, I worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a Deputy Director General of the Cultural, Scientific, and International Information Department. Before becoming a diplomat, I was a journalist, chief reporter at the Budapest Sun. That was the largest circulation English language weekly in Hungary, supervising its team of news reporters, and was also responsible for writing the opinion articles. I was born and educated in Budapest, graduating from the ELTE University, majoring in English and history. I also spent a semester in the US at Graceland College, Lamoni, Iowa. My wife, Eva, is an applied artist, formerly a professional singer, and actually we met in a funk band where I played the piano. And we have two high schooler daughters, Angela and Mira. Before talking about family policy, I would like to quickly give some highlights on Hungary, raise the question of whether demography is a private issue or a challenge the whole national community faces. And finally, I will give you a brief summary of the provisions of the Hungarian family policy. Hungary is a small nation, especially compared to the US. We are only 10 million people, or if I count all the ethnic Hungarians living all around the world, it is still not more than 12 million. Hungary is an old nation, though, coming from Asia and taking our land in the 9th century. Our first king was crowned in the year 1000. During the 1,000-year-long existence of our country, many times we were at the brink of extinction. Mongolian invasion in the 13th century, Ottoman conquest in the 16th century, Habsburg rule, revolutions, world wars, Nazi and then Russian occupation, and final freedom and free elections in 1990. And just an example how full we are with history, this is a dark day, the very one we are having today, because this is the day in 1956 when the Hungarian Revolution was crushed down by the Russian troops. Since we do not have valuable natural resources, this is one of the reasons we are dependent on Russian gas and oil in this war happening in the neighborhood in Ukraine, and we are not a wealthy country. All we have is our talented minds and our rich culture. The following short video on our capital, Budapest, highlights some of the Hungarian inventions we use every day, but the origins of which you most probably never heard of.
And if you love the wrong person, you gotta live with that. Right now, I just need you to listen. All my lovers out there, make sure you wanna be with you, dig? Cheer. mistake, baby. Ain't no turning back now, though. You gotta live with it. You feel me? Let's go. Love gone for good, ain't never coming back. Bloodshot red, now my heart turned black. We was both young, I ain't never blamed that. Both got hurt like the train, same track. I need to let you know that I need to let you go. Find me at the club, getting poppin' like whoa. When you sleep at night, hope you think about your boy. Lying, looking up, thinking that you hear my voice. Hear it in your room, hear it all alone. Hearing things, thinking that I'm breathing on the phone, but I'm gone, girl. Trying to play me for a fool, but you're wrong, girl. I'm full of pain, loving you. One life to live, so live it to the fullest. The hell with the haters, love hurt like bullets. Now I'm P.I.M.P. Cupid with a semi. Lovers keep a couple, now the prophet got plenty. Go.
Okay, so much about history and inventions, and now let's talk about the family support. Hungary began to work out its family policy strategy in 2010 when the second Orban government, following a landslide election victory, took office after 8 years in opposition. Since then, it has been re-elected 3 more times, last in April, so it serves now its 4th consecutive term with a 2/3 majority in the parliament. Seizing power 12 years ago, the Orban cabinet had to face the fact that the fertility rate in Hungary was one of the worst in the European Union, 1.2. It means that in order to maintain the current number of the community, you need a fertility rate about 2.1, that is the official figure, and we were at 1.2, which meant the country has rapidly lost its population since 1981, at its peak of 10.7 million. And out of the planned 5 kids, eventually only 3 were born. But not only the figures were quite devastating, the government also had to deal with a completely different philosophical approach of its leftish political rival, which had abolished all the family supports, tax rebates, part-time and home office work opportunities previously offered to young mothers, based on the assumption that raising a child is a private decision similarly to any other consumer decisions, such as buying a sports car and bearing its cost. But is it really? Are our kids exclusively the sources of our personal joy and not the means of the common good? It seems there is a fundamental combat in the European societies between those who consider the individual as the core of society and those who consider the family as the heart of society, realizing an essential element of the common good. Conservative governments typically emphasize slogans like less government, more responsibility. However, the market alone has little interest in preserving family life as we have known it. The Orban cabinet believes families are the basic units of the nation. This is the core of the government's philosophy. If you love using a fashionable term like subsidiarity, then we can say families are at the lowest level where all the major problems come up first: financial, social, and educational challenges. Therefore, it is a fundamental interest of a government to strengthen families and make them more resilient before the problems arise on a higher level, and government institutions need to tackle with them. Family support is an investment in the future and not a cost. It is also the redistribution of the common wealth in different terms when taxes are not only based merely on income, but take the number of dependents into account as well. So we can conclude that the Hungarian government believes raising kids and having a family is the most personal public matter. Therefore, the government decided to increase the subsidies threefold. And now Hungary invests well over 5% of its GDP in family support. Those who are familiar with financial policies know actually how high it is. Just to give you an example, NATO requires its member states to spend 2% of their GDP on military expenditures. We spend 3 times more on children than the military, 3 times more on family than on war. I will give you 3 examples of how this huge amount of money is spent. First, I am well aware of what political turbulence the forgiveness of the student loan stirred here. As a diplomat, I'm not supposed to comment on the decisions of a foreign government, but instead, let me demonstrate the strategy and the consecutive steps behind the student loan policy of my government. A first-time mother with student loan debt can suspend repayment for 3 years. Half the debt is remitted with a second child, and the entirety with a third. The second element of the family policy is that mothers with at least 4 children do not have to pay personal income tax ever for the rest of their lives in Hungary. I know here in Texas you don't pay personal income tax, but it's a big deal. I mean, in European societies, so it's a huge amount of money. And recently, the Prime Minister announced that he would like to involve mothers of 3, should the financial situation of the country permit, amid the crisis caused by the war Russia wages on Ukraine. And the third element is that Hungary has an extremely long parental leave. That means that you can stay 3 years at home with your child without having to fear you can be laid off from your work. So the law secures your place. Now, parental leave is not only for the mothers, but for the fathers as well, should the mother choose to return to work. There was a question about mensual before. Now this is one of the answers. So fathers, and not only fathers, can go on parental leave, because the new element is that the grandmother or grandfather can go on parental leave as well if both parents decide to go back to work. The grandparents' benefit pays out 70% of a grandparent's prior income. Dr. Hudson mentioned before that it's not all about money, just giving out a huge sum of money and see what happens. I completely agree. Hungary's family policy system, therefore, is spread across several different programs. At the base level, Hungary's family policy system affords a maternity allowance, an infant care allowance in the first month, a child care allowance for caregivers of young children, a child care benefit, and at a lesser level, but over subsequent years, a child rearing benefit. Since family formation is also a home formation, the program also includes low-rate loans for families expecting babies, subsidies for buying or refurbishing homes, providing substantial financial aid to families with 3 children. The government has raised the number of nursery homes by 80%, subsidizes school meals, and supports even the minivan purchase for families with at least 3 kids by up to the 50% of the price. Again, something we have to face when we raise kids, that you need a big car, and you need a bigger home. And the system of family support also covers young adults by granting tax-free status under 25. It includes modifications to the labor code to facilitate part-time employment of parents of small children, already a common practice elsewhere in Europe, and includes a Women 40 benefit that offers retirement at full pension benefit after 40 years of employment, regardless of the age. The state also subsidizes a baby bond with a starter deposit made by the government at birth, with 3% interest rate above inflation, at an additional annual subsidy. It could be one of the reasons Dr. Schuber mentioned why Hungary was fifth on the list from the bottom, why people think they are not worse off, having babies. Because besides the various financial initiatives, new think tanks and organizations were founded with pro-family state mandate. Mayors of cities can compete for pro-family municipality prize. A family-friendly tourism certification was issued. Employers can compete for the family-friendly workplace prize. And the family-friendly place certification designates family-friendly service providers, just to name a few moves that all make part of the network of decisions. Hungarian laws protect and support families from the moment of conception. As our constitution declares, and I quote, "Hungary shall protect the institution of marriage as the union of one man and one woman, established by voluntary decision, and the family as the basis of the survival of the nation. Family ties shall be based on marriage or the relationship between parents and children." And this is a new section: "The mother shall be a woman, the father shall be a man." And I quote again, "We hold that the family and the nation constitute the principal framework of our coexistence. Every child shall have the right to protection and care necessary for his or her proper physical, mental, and moral development. Hungary shall protect the right of children to self-identify corresponding to their sex at birth, and shall ensure an upbringing for them that is in accordance with the values based on the constitutional identity and Christian culture of our country." One of the good signs of the changing mindset is that the number of marriages has doubled during the last decade due to tax allowances. The fertility rate has also grown by 25%, so it's about 1.6 now, even if we are still far from even maintaining the current figures, and the number of divorces considerably decreased. It is 60 years low right now. The number of abortions has never been at such a low level since 1954, when actually it was banned. And now, out of the planned 5 babies, eventually 4 are born. In general, these are positive signs indeed. Unfortunately, and we've been discussing this before, despite all the measures and due to various factors, including the falling number of women in the potential age for giving birth by the thousands, the number of babies has continued to decline. They were 38,000 shorter between 2015 and 2020 than a decade before. On January the 1st, 2010, the number of children aged 0 to 12 was 1,261,000, and 12 years later, on January the 1st this year, it was 1,208,000, that is minus 53,000 kids. These are the mere statistical facts. And Dr. Schuber also cited data from East and Central European countries. So if you compare the demographic data of the countries in the East and Central European region, it seems that the overall economic conditions and forecasts in these countries are almost as important in shaping the birth rate as all the various financial stimuli provided by the respective governments. The Czech Republic, Poland, and Romania all introduced financial stimuli to boost their fertility rate. However, for instance, Slovakia has not. Yet the number of births moved similarly to the rest of the neighboring countries during the last decades. Mind, we don't know if, say, Hungary did not introduce these measures, what would have happened. I'm just referring to the statistical facts that Slovakia doesn't have anything like that, a specific family policy program, yet because of the positive economic outlook, the figures of fertility rates were quite similar. And it is also important to bear in mind that other factors such as the quality of the school system, the healthcare system, the level of corruption and crime, and the overall economic outlook all play an important role in family formation. Anyway, despite the economic crisis created by the war Russia has been waging in Ukraine, the government of Hungary will keep on pursuing its exceptional family-friendly policies. Since we all want to live in a society based on solidarity, compassion, and inclusion, we all prefer a world of values to a world of interest. There was a question about why we want kids at all. Well, our answer is that we all believe what we achieved so far is based on the alliance of the generation of the deceased, the living, and the unborn. And we all expect well-being from the future. However, besides jobs, new cars, and fancy vacations for many, it also means family, kids, friends, love, and national pride. Since the food tastes better if you have someone to share with, a house is always cozier if you can call it a home with a family, and it feels better to go to your work if your job is something meaningful, if you build your community with it as well. Thank you for your attention, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you for that. I have a question about the marriages. I'm wondering if Hungary is what all Hungary might be doing to encourage marriages, because I know South Korea has started putting a bunch of money into matchmaking and dating apps and making like cafes for people. Is it just tax related, or are there other measures there?
Yeah, tax related,
Okay.
and yeah, basically it's just
No
tax
matchmaking
related.
yet?
No, nothing, nothing into the bedrooms or stuff like that.
Thank you so much. Really interesting to learn the details. I have kind of a related question, which is, what's the extent of single parenthood and non-marital fertility in Hungary?
Yeah, actually, looked into the data during Dr. Schuber's talk, and I have data from 2016. Unfortunately, it was what I can tell you is that for that time, 47% of the kids were born out of wedlock, which is quite a high number. But since then, the figures have been better. But at that time, it was one. I think I can look it up as well. But I think the best or the worst figures were in France. It was approximately 60% of kids were born out of wedlock.
I was just gonna. Can I just ask a quick follow-up? Has there been any analysis in Hungary of the effect on child outcomes, on child poverty, on child? I would think that would be one of the great benefits of the policy is improvement in the living standards and capabilities of kids.
Thank you very much for the question. To be honest, the sociology of the trend, the fertility trend is that most of the kids that were born due to this family-friendly policy were born outside the capital, and mainly at the poorer northeastern part of the country, in small towns under 20,000 inhabitants. There, the fertility rate is almost 2, it's 1.9. And it's interesting that basically women in their 40s with graduate degree were the mothers. Uh, yeah, and no one really knows the answer. Fertility rate here, especially because the family friend policy, as you heard, comes mainly in tax cuts, so not direct social support. So fertility rate here grew by 11%. However, in the capital, in Budapest, only by 1%. And the number of potential mothers decreased by nearly 150,000 during this period. So that is the main thing. Although we have considerable growth in the fertility rate, there's a huge number of mothers who are disappearing just because of previous fertility law, and many going abroad, especially Western Europe. So for instance, this year the number of women aged 45 and 49 was 389,000, whereas the number of women aged 20 till 24, the ideal age for giving birth is 253,000. So you can see the decrease of number. And it's interesting that the actual number of births fell, especially in big cities, in Budapest by 9%. So if you see the actual number of births, it fell in Budapest. So that's the statistics.
That's absolutely fascinating. That's something I think a lot of people don't understand, is once you start having fewer and fewer mothers, it's really, really hard to get yourself out
Exactly.
of that, right? All right, well, we do have a question from DC. Let me see if I can pull that up here again. These are quite generous policies. What are the adoption rates of these policies by the Hungarian people? I'm particularly interested to know whether mothers and fathers consistently take the parental leave, or if they do return to work before those 3 years.
So the first was the adoption rate. Now the Hungarian laws permit adoption for both to people in wedlock and also for private individuals. However, wedded couples are preferred, and registered. There's a category of registered partnership, and they can legally adopt only with special ministerial permission. And what was the second question?
I think what they meant by adoption is how many parents actually take the full 3 years, or do they come back to work before?
Well, I don't have, to be honest, I don't have statistics on that. But of course, since it is, given by the law, I guess more or most of them, take advantage of this situation and stay at home with their kids for 3 years.
Right here. Hi. Thank you. The information has been very useful for your career with so much of the media and science information and culture and the rural aspect of my perception. So much of Hungary, do people receive most information from public radio, internet? Are there very many television channels that influence the marketing choices of people that, oh, I want to buy things, as opposed to living life in a different way? Pardon, that's it.
Yeah. Well, it depends. Actually, when the Prime Minister was criticized for not having enough opposition papers, he shot a video by going down to a booth and asked for all the opposition papers, and it showed it up that there were tons of them. So basically, regarding your question, it depends that people in the countryside and with the lower education level mainly listen to the public radio only and public television. Of course, they can all have access to all sorts of opposition newspaper and opposition media and internet, but it's mainly people living in bigger cities and especially in the capital, in Budapest, that rely more on opposition papers and opposition media. But they can have, I mean, they have access to anything they want, you know, like foreign channels or whatever. So nothing is, you know, curtailed or limited or something like that. Thank you very much.